My brother called me a loser during a family dinner, right in front of everyone. I just took a sip of my drink and let him enjoy his moment. 1 week later, he applied for a loan to launch his business. Guess whose name was on the inheritance deed the bank needed? Mine. I stared him dead in the eye and said, "Losers don't cosign." They served me papers. My own parents. They wanted to take my home, the only place my son had ever known, and the worst part? The person who saved us was the last one I ever expected. I'm Liam, 36, a teacher, a dad. For 12 years, I'd been the one holding our family home together, pouring my life into it. It wasn't some grand estate, just a 3-bedroom brick house in the suburbs. Creaky floors, a busted screen door, a maple tree that blazed orange every fall. But it was home. It's where I brought Sam home from the hospital, where I buried our old dog, where I'd sit on the porch with my ex-wife before the divorce, before everything shattered. My parents, Arthur and Eleanor, moved to Arizona back in 2011. They wanted a fresh start, escaping the cold. I was 24, newly married, just out of college, barely making ends meet. They offered the house to me, rent-free, for as long as I needed. It felt like a blessing. A family legacy, they called it. "Keep it in good shape," Eleanor had said, brushing my hair back like I was still a kid. "One day it'll be yours anyway." No lease, no paperwork, just a verbal promise and a goodbye hug. And I believed them. With all my heart. Fast forward to now. I'd poured over a decade of my life into that place. I fixed the plumbing, replaced the roof, repainted every room, even built a playroom for Sam in the basement, all with my own savings, my own hands. I paid the taxes, mowed the lawn. I kept it alive. Meanwhile, my younger brother, Bryce, the golden child, the finance guy, was bouncing between high-rise condos in the city, living fast, burning through jobs. He'd post shirtless gym selfies with inspirational quotes and call it content. We were never close. I was the quiet, sensitive one. He was loud, the performer. It all started last Christmas. We were doing our usual family thing, a week at my parents' place in Scottsdale, Arizona. They like everything big and dramatic, matching pajamas, rented boats. Sam, who'd just turned 7, was obsessed with sea turtles, so I took him on an eco tour, just us. While we were gone, Bryce apparently made some kind of pitch to my parents. I didn't know it then. All I knew was walking into a very weird conversation. "It's not about deserving it," Eleanor was saying, flustered. "But he's just living there," Bryce snapped. "He's not even paying rent." "You said it yourself. He's been there long enough." They both stopped cold when I walked in. Eleanor forced a smile. Bryce just smirked like he'd caught me. A tightness seized my chest, like I'd missed something important and couldn't rewind. "Hey," I said slowly. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Eleanor replied too quickly. "Just talking about your old bedroom. That's all." I didn't believe her, not for a second, but I let it go. Then things moved fast. When we got home, there was a letter taped to my front door from a law firm. It said the property owners were reviewing occupancy and considering a transfer of ownership. I called Eleanor in a panic. She told me not to read into it, that they were just evaluating options for estate planning. 2 weeks later, I was served. My own parents were suing me to vacate the house. The house I'd lived in and maintained for 12 years. So they could transfer the deed to a more responsible family member. They didn't even have the courage to say Bryce's name. I was stunned. I sat at the kitchen table for hours just staring at the documents. Sam was playing with Legos. He looked up with those big eyes and asked, "Are we moving?" I didn't know how to answer. I still don't. I tried calling my parents again, but they stopped picking up. Eleanor finally texted days later, "It's best if we handle this through legal channels. This isn't personal." Not personal. I was fighting for the roof over my kid's head. And it wasn't personal? I thought maybe there was a misunderstanding. So I drove to Bryce's apartment. I was angry, yes, but I just wanted to talk to him. Why go behind my back? Maybe he needed help, maybe he thought the house was vacant half the year. But when he opened the door, he didn't pretend to be surprised. Well, he said, folding his arms. Took you long enough. What is this, Bryce? I asked, holding up the envelope. It's what should have happened years ago, he said, without missing a beat. You got to play house in the suburbs for over a decade while I was grinding in the city. You think that's fair? You didn't want the house, I said. You left. You've never lifted a finger for it. I paid the property tax out of my own bank account. He rolled his eyes. You're acting like you own it. You don't, Liam. Mom and Dad do. You're just squatting. That word, squatting, made something snap in me. I felt this heat crawl up my neck. Squatting? Are you serious? I raised my son here. I buried our dog in that backyard. I fixed everything you all ignored. And I'm the one who convinced them to finally cash in, Bryce said. You really think they were going to let you have it forever? I stood there stunned. I couldn't decide if I wanted to punch him or cry. Maybe both. You're unbelievable, I whispered. You already make 6 figures. Why do you need the house, too? Because I can, he said with a shrug. And because you never learned how to play the game. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about need. This was about power. Bryce wanted to win. He wanted to prove he was the better son, the more successful one, and he was using our parents to do it. That night, I sat in the living room, lights dim, Sam asleep upstairs. I felt this heavy, suffocating silence. I didn't know what to do. I'd never fought a legal battle. I was a high school English teacher with a modest salary and a broken heart. And now I was being dragged into court by the very people who once rocked me to sleep. I considered just leaving, packing up, finding a rental. But every time I looked at Sam's crayon drawings on the fridge, or the dent in the banister where he crashed his scooter, I knew I couldn't walk away. Not like this. They wanted a war? Fine. But they had no idea what they'd started. And they had no idea what my son had saved without me ever knowing. I wish I could say the worst of it ended there. But betrayal doesn't hit you like a wave. It seeps in slow and acidic, corroding every memory. For weeks, I kept expecting Eleanor to call, saying, "This has gone too far." All I got was silence. Well, not true. 5 days after I visited Bryce, I got one text from her, "Liam, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. We still love you, love." That word nearly made me laugh. You don't evict someone you love without a conversation. You don't pit sons against each other and act like the victim. Even as the anger built, I still held on to desperate hope. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Bryce had convinced them I was secretly renting it out. So I called my aunt, Sarah, Eleanor's younger sister, someone grounded, someone I trusted. "Liam," she said, her voice soft but careful. "I've been waiting for you to call." That's when I realized she already knew. She sighed. "I didn't want to get in the middle, but I told your mom this wasn't right." I sank onto the couch. "So, it's not a misunderstanding. They really want to hand the house over to Bryce?" "I don't think it was their idea at first," she said slowly. "Bryce has been planting seeds for a long time, telling them you were freeloading, that you were never going to move out, that he could flip the house." Flip the house? I blinked. He told them he could turn it into a luxury rental. Said the neighborhood values were going up, and they'd be fools not to cash in. It was like hearing someone talk about my home like a spreadsheet. A unit to be optimized. My blood boiled. Did they believe him? Another long pause. Arthur thinks Bryce knows more about business. Eleanor, she's tired, Liam. She doesn't want drama. She thinks if you just go peacefully, everything will be fine. Go peacefully. Like I was some squatter in a standoff. I thanked Sarah and hung up. I couldn't sleep. I paced through the house, looking at every dent, every chipped corner, every paint color I'd chosen with my ex-wife. It wasn't just a house. It was years of my life. Memories. The one stable thing I had left after the divorce, after my ex moved halfway across the country, leaving me to raise Sam alone. Now even that was being taken. The next blow came a week later. My principal called. She sounded stiff. Hey, Liam, just a heads up. About what? We got a letter from a law firm requesting employment verification, and it had a note attached. A question about whether you've ever used your school credentials to register public services under a false address. I felt the air punched out of me. What? I've never. What does that even mean? She lowered her voice. I don't know what's going on, but it looked personal. They said it's part of a property dispute. Are you okay? I assured her I was, but I wasn't. Not even close. That's when I realized Bryce wasn't just trying to win the case. He was trying to burn my credibility. He was hoping I'd crack, get fired, or lose custody of Sam. I'd never done anything close to what they were implying, but in a court battle, even the suggestion can taint you. Suddenly, I was rereading every form I'd ever filled out, wondering if I'd made some mistake they'd twist into a weapon. I started documenting everything, every conversation, every repair I'd done, every bank statement showing I'd paid utilities and taxes. Receipts from Home Depot going back to 2012. Emails from the city about a tree removal. I wasn't going down without a fight. But the hardest part wasn't the legal prep. It was Sam. He could tell something was wrong. He's always been sensitive, observant. One night, while I was sorting papers, he wandered in. Are we moving soon? Why would you ask that, buddy? He shrugged, his voice small. I heard you say court. That's where people go when someone's in trouble. I knelt beside him. No one's in trouble. We're just working through something, but this is still your home. Okay, he nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. A few days later, Eleanor sent me an invitation to a family brunch. It was almost surreal. A printed card with floral designs, let's reconnect and talk. Just us. I almost didn't go. But I was desperate. Maybe she was coming to her senses. I left Sam with a friend and drove across town to the brunch spot. Eleanor was already there, sipping a mimosa. She stood and gave me a hug that felt like a formality. I'm glad you came, she said. Are you? I asked quietly. She sighed. Liam, this doesn't have to be ugly. We can resolve this without all the drama. You mean me giving up and moving out? I said flatly. She winced. It's not about sides. Your father and I just want what's best for the family. I stared at her. You think giving the house to Bryce is what's best? He has plans, she said quickly. He wants to renovate, maybe even live there eventually. You're not exactly going anywhere, Liam. That line hit me harder than I expected. What does that mean? She looked away. You've been stuck since the divorce. You teach, you parent, but there's no growth, no ambition. Maybe this push will help you find something new. I sat in stunned silence. She wasn't just trying to take my home. She genuinely thought it would be good for me. Did Bryce tell you to say that? I asked quietly. She blinked. Excuse me? Did he write this whole brunch script for you? Did he coach you on how to make it sound like love while you stabbed me in the back? Her mouth dropped open. Liam, how dare you? No, I said, standing up. How dare you? You told me to take care of that house. You said it would be mine. And now, because your golden child suddenly wants a rental property, I'm being treated like a parasite. Watch your tone, she snapped, the mask slipping. I leaned in. You watch your son, Mom, because he's making enemies faster than you realize. I walked out before she could say another word. That night, Sam climbed into bed with me after a nightmare. He didn't say much, just curled up next to me like he used to when he was smaller. I stared at the ceiling, rage and heartbreak battling in my chest. I knew then this wouldn't end with a peaceful talk. It was war now. A few weeks later, I got the official court date. And something strange happened. Sam started acting secretive. He'd vanish into his room with his tablet, headphones on, whispering. I assumed he was playing a game. But one night, I peeked in and saw him recording something. When he noticed me, he quickly turned it off. What are you doing, buddy? He shrugged. Just something for school. I didn't press. My mind was elsewhere. Court was coming. Bryce had hired a team of attorneys. I had Maria, a lawyer I found through a friend, decent but not flashy. We prepped every night. My parents hadn't relented. In fact, they doubled down. Arthur sent me a letter accusing me of diminishing the property's value by turning the garage into a temporary office. Eleanor submitted a sworn affidavit claiming I'd never received a verbal promise of ownership. They both sat on the other side of that courtroom like strangers when the day finally came. But I didn't break. Because in the middle of the trial, just when everything seemed stacked against me, something happened. Sam, my quiet, thoughtful 7-year-old son, raised his hand and asked the judge if he could say something. And when the judge, Honorable Elena Reyes, allowed it, Sam said, "Can I show the judge something my dad's never seen?" He pulled out his tablet. I didn't even know he'd been recording anything. He stood there, small in that giant courtroom, clutching his scratched-up tablet with the cracked corner. His voice trembled just a little when he asked. Judge Reyes looked over her glasses and nodded gently. You may, young man, if it's relevant. Sam's thumb hovered over the play button, then he tapped it. At first, nothing, just static, background noise. The faint hum of a dishwasher, maybe. Then, muffled but clear enough, Bryce's voice. So when he's out, we send the contractors in. I already have a guy lined up to start demo. He can get the kitchen in a weekend. My spine straightened. The courtroom went silent. The judge raised an eyebrow. Where was this recorded? Sam looked at me, nervous now. At Christmas when we went to Arizona. I was hiding under the patio table with my tablet 'cause I was bored. I didn't mean to record it. It just happened. The audio continued, clearer now. Eleanor's voice, tired. I still feel bad about it, Bryce. He's lived there so long. I don't want to hurt him. You're not hurting him, Bryce said sharply. You're setting boundaries. He's been playing the victim since the divorce. You want him in that house forever, being pitted by everyone? I just don't want this to come back on us legally. It won't, Bryce said confidently. Trust me, I've already talked to the lawyer. We get the court to evict him, transfer the deed, and then we list. Silence. Then Arthur, sounding distant. Let's just be careful. He's not stupid. Bryce laughed. He's an English teacher with a sad divorce and a soft kid. He won't fight. He folds. He always has. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Sam quickly turned off the tablet. That's all. Judge Reyes was stone still. She turned to me. Mr. Bennett, did you have knowledge of this conversation? I couldn't speak. I shook my head slowly, my throat dry, gripping the table until my knuckles were white. My lawyer stood. We'd like to enter this into evidence, Your Honor. Everything changed. Court recessed. The judge needed time to review the recording. Bryce's lawyers scrambled, arguing its legality. But Sam had recorded it in a one-party consent state. It was admissible. What hit me hardest wasn't the legal impact. It was hearing their voices like that. My family plotting behind my back, talking about me like I was a burden. I knew Bryce didn't respect me. But hearing Eleanor say she felt bad while still going along with it? That destroyed something in me I didn't know could break. I didn't go home right away. I took Sam for ice cream. He was quiet, sitting on the bench. Was that okay? He asked, not looking up. What I showed them? I blinked, struggling to keep it together. I pulled him close. Sam, you were brave. So brave. I thought you'd be mad. Mad? Why? He bit his lip. You always say not to spy and not to listen to grown-up talk. I gave a broken laugh. Yeah, I do say that. He looked up, serious now. But they were being mean to you. I didn't want them to win. Tears stung my eyes. I hadn't cried in years. Not when my ex left. Not about the lawsuit. But right there, on that bench, I broke a little. We sat there for a long time. When I finally dropped him off at school the next day and returned home, something felt off. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw the side gate was unlatched. That gate had a sticky lock, I always jiggled it twice. I knew I'd closed it. Inside, the smell hit me first. Fresh paint, chemical, like primer. I walked through the house slowly. That's when I saw it. The kitchen cabinets, half-painted, tools scattered. A new sink still in its box. Dust everywhere. Someone had started demo. I grabbed my phone and checked the security app. I only had cameras outside, facing the porch and driveway. But the app showed something chilling. 2 men, clearly visible, entering the side yard at 6:42 a.m., a white van behind them. Contractor uniforms. One had a clipboard. I called the number on the van. A local home improvement company. Who ordered work at my address? The receptionist paused. Let me check. Yes, that would be Mr. Bryce Bennett. He confirmed this work order 2 weeks ago. We were told it was a vacant property under remodel. I hung up without another word. That was the moment the line was crossed. Bryce wasn't just trying to win. He was actively violating the law, acting as if he already owned the house. He sent contractors into my home while my son and I were asleep. I called the police. The officers confirmed the work order, spoke to the workers who'd left. But without clear proof of trespassing intent, it was hard to press charges. Still, they filed a report and advised me to change the locks and install interior cameras. I followed their advice. I also called Maria. This isn't just a civil matter anymore, I said. This is criminal trespass. He's trying to force me out by making the house unlivable. Maria agreed. We added it to the evidence. But that night, something inside me collapsed. I sat in Sam's room while he slept, staring at the walls. The posters, the glow-in-the-dark stars, his tiny bookshelf. I imagined him walking in from school to find strangers tearing apart our kitchen. I felt powerless, violated. Then I got a text from Bryce, "You're dragging this out longer than you need to. Everyone knows you're not winning." Why not make this easy on the kid? No greeting, no signature. The kid. Like Sam wasn't a person, just a pawn. I snapped. I wrote back, "If you ever send anyone into my house again, I will press charges and file for a restraining order. You crossed the line." He responded, "You don't get it. This isn't about you. It's about them. They're not giving it to you, Liam. Wake up." He was right about one thing. It wasn't just him anymore. The next day, I received a letter from my parents' lawyer accusing me of sabotaging renovations and tampering with contractor access. It warned that if I interfered again, they'd seek damages. They were blaming me for stopping unauthorized work in my own home. I called Eleanor. No answer. Arthur. Voicemail. I emailed them photos of the mess and the police report. No response. And then another betrayal. Sam's school. I was pulled into a meeting with the principal, school counselor, and, to my surprise, a representative from Child Protective Services. Apparently, an anonymous tip alleged Sam was living in unsafe conditions and exposed to legal conflict without protection. I was livid. The social worker was kind. She could tell the situation was retaliatory. She visited our home, inspected each room. When she left, she patted my shoulder. "I believe you, but this kind of thing, it happens more than you'd think. People weaponize the system when they want control." I felt numb. That night, Sam asked if we were still safe, if someone was going to take him away. I held him tight. "No, no one is taking you anywhere. This is our home, and we're going to fight for it." But deep down, I was breaking. I'd been betrayed, lied to, manipulated, humiliated. Now they were trying to take my son away, or at least scare me into thinking they could. That's when I stopped hoping they'd see reason. That's when I started planning. Not revenge exactly, but strategy. It's funny how rock bottom gives you clarity. For me, it came from sitting in the dark at 2 a.m. after months of betrayal, staring at a cracked kitchen towel I couldn't afford to replace, thinking, I've got nothing left to lose. That's when I stopped reacting and started building. I called in sick for 3 days. This wasn't a legal case anymore. It was a power struggle. I was done being at the mercy of everyone else's decisions. Step 1: Get smart. Daniel, my old paralegal friend, connected me with Marcus. Ex-military, ex-private investigator. Exactly the guy you want when someone's trying to erase your life. Marcus wasn't cheap, but he agreed to a payment plan. He listened without judgment. "So," he said after an hour, "you want me to find dirt on your brother?" "I want to know what he's hiding," I said. Because a guy like Bryce, someone who plays as dirty as he does, doesn't get through life spotless. Marcus smirked. They never do. By the end of that week, Marcus discovered Bryce owned 2 LLCs registered under different names, one in Montana, one in Utah. Both tied to rental properties in rough shape. One had been sued for mold-related health violations. The other bought through a cash deal that raised red flags. He also found deleted social media messages, bragging about renting dumps to desperate families. I didn't even know where to begin. "I'm going to print all of this," I told Maria. "Let's bring it to court." She shook her head. "Not yet. Let's wait until the next hearing. Hit them all at once." She was right. Step 2: Go on the offensive. I filed a restraining order against Bryce for the unauthorized contractor intrusion. The housing code violation threat backfired. After the inspector saw my documentation, he withdrew the violation and noted the original complaint seemed retaliatory. Even better, a week later, CPS closed their case. I'd kept my composure, been cooperative. Sam had told them, "My dad always makes sure I'm safe." That was what did it. I framed that letter. Step 3. Tell the story. Until now, I'd been quiet on social media. But Bryce had painted me as a squatter. So, I posted a simple public message on Facebook for those who've asked. Yes, I'm in the middle of a legal battle. My parents are attempting to evict me from the home I've lived in, raised my son in, and maintained for over a decade. My brother, who has never lived in this house or paid a single bill, is trying to claim it as a financial asset. I've kept quiet out of respect for my family. But silence only helps manipulators. I'm fighting this, not just for me, but for Sam. Thank you to everyone who's reached out. The post went semi-viral in our small town. Former neighbors commented, my old high school teacher, even Arthur's old coworkers. I remember when you painted that porch yourself. This is awful. Your brother's a snake. It wasn't a legal win, but it was a narrative win. And narrative, I was learning, was everything. Step 4. Make it hurt. While Bryce trashed my name and bought off contractors, he hadn't been watching his own backyard. Marcus sent me photos of one of Bryce's rental properties in Utah. The roof was caved in. Multiple code violations. A fire hazard. Worse, a single mom named Anya had filed a complaint and Bryce never responded. Anya had been threatened with eviction when she complained about black mold. Marcus found her and got her to agree to a signed statement. That was my ace in the hole. I'd wait until court to use it. And in the meantime, I rebuilt. Not just the legal case. I mean me. I started sleeping again. I reconnected with friends. I started waking early to journal, something my therapist had recommended during my divorce, but I'd never committed to. Sam noticed the change. You're not sad anymore, he said one morning. I was never sad, I said with a smile. Just a little tired. He nodded. You're like a superhero who had a charge. He wasn't wrong. I also started fixing the house again, not because I thought it would sway the court, but because it was mine. I rerouted the tiles, sanded, and repainted the banister. I finally cleaned out the garage, turning it into a small workspace. Sam and I started building things on weekends, birdhouses, Lego contraptions, little woodworking projects. Every night I added more to my Google Doc, timelines, receipts, quotes from neighbors, screenshots, letters of support. I even got a notarized statement from the guy who'd sold me the HVAC unit 5 years ago, confirming I'd paid for it in full. I was rebuilding my case from the inside out. And as I did, my confidence grew. One day, out of the blue, a text from Eleanor. Liam, can we talk, please? I let it sit for 2 days. Then I responded, only if Bryce is not involved. No more group ambushes. She replied immediately, just me. Tomorrow, lunch. Part of me wanted to say no, but curiosity won. We met at a park, neutral ground. She looked older than I remembered. Tired. Fragile. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe guilt. But when she saw me, she smiled. I miss you, she said softly. I didn't reply. She sat on the bench. Your father and I, we didn't expect it to get this far. I let out a quiet laugh. You hired a lawyer and filed for eviction. That's not something that just happens. She looked at her hands. Bryce said we had to. He said if we didn't act fast, you'd claim squatters' rights and take the house away from us. I stared at her. Do you hear how insane that sounds? You think I'd steal from you? She looked up, tears in her eyes. No, I don't. I didn't know what to believe anymore. You believed him, I said. You always have. She nodded slowly. We made a mistake. We sat in silence. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. I'm thinking of rescinding the power of attorney. What? I turned to her. I haven't signed anything yet, but Bryce has been pushing too hard. And after that recording Sam played. I see it now. He doesn't want to help us. He wants control. I leaned back. Finally. A crack in their armor. Then don't sign it, I said. It's not too late. She nodded. I'll talk to your father. But I wasn't relying on her anymore. If she did the right thing, great. If not, I was still winning. The final hearing was approaching. The judge had scheduled it as a multi-day proceeding. Maria and I were ready. The new plan: show every receipt, present every signed statement, expose Bryce's sketchy property dealings. Then, and only then, bring in Anya's testimony. And if things went well, maybe, just maybe, end it with something no one expected. Because Marcus had found something else, something I hadn't told Maria yet, something that could shatter Bryce's credibility in one blow. But that would wait for the final day. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of the courtroom. I owned it. It felt like a stage, and I was finally ready to perform. After months of lies, betrayals, secret recordings, and weaponized legal filings, the final hearing was just a week away. This time, I wasn't scared. Not because I had it all figured out, I still woke up at 3 a.m. some nights, panicking, but because I finally had leverage, and I knew how to use it. The courtroom is where truth gets wrapped in strategy. Bryce had been throwing punches in the dark, hoping something would stick. But now I had structure, evidence, a narrative, and more importantly, time working in my favor. The longer this dragged out, the more his own arrogance exposed him. It started with a phone call. Marcus rang me on a Thursday afternoon. I was in my classroom, cleaning whiteboard markers off my hands. You got a second? He asked. For you, always. He didn't waste time. I found a bank statement that might interest you, he said. Not Bryce's, but your parents'. It's public because they signed a shared mortgage in Utah years ago, and there's a lien filed against it for non-payment. I blinked. Wait, my parents are in debt? More than you think. That second home, the investment condo in Provo, Bryce talked them into buying? It's underwater. And Bryce convinced them to take out a reverse mortgage to cover the difference. I felt my stomach twist. Are you serious? They're up to their neck, Liam. And guess who the loan officer was? I didn't answer. I already knew. Bryce, Marcus confirmed, through a shell financial advisory firm he opened 2 years ago. That was the moment everything clicked. This wasn't just about me. This wasn't just about the house. Bryce was trying to liquidate everything, my parents included. He positioned himself as their financial savior, convinced them to sign power of attorney. He was maneuvering their assets like chess pieces. The house I lived in wasn't the prize. It was just the first domino. If I left quietly, he'd flip it, sell their condo, consolidate control of their accounts, and then what? I could see the endgame now. He was planning to drain them dry. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Not to me, and not to them. Even after everything they'd done. I asked Marcus for every document he could dig up. Bank transfers, legal filings, even Bryce's promotional materials for his so-called firm. Within 2 days, I had a fat folder of evidence and a 12-slide presentation. Maria helped me prep for the final hearing. But even with that locked and loaded, I wanted more. Something devastating, something personal. Then, as if the universe decided to give me an early Christmas gift, I got a call from Anya, the tenant from Bryce's Utah property. I've been thinking about our conversation, she said. And I want to help. You already signed a statement, I told her. That was brave. No, she said. I want to testify in person if you'll let me. I was stunned. You do? I want people to see what kind of man he really is, she said. He threatened to evict me when I told him there was mold. He wouldn't fix the leak. My daughter got sick, Liam. The doctor found black mold spores in her lungs. I had to break the lease just to get out. I can't afford a lawyer, but I can stand in front of a judge. That was when I knew this wasn't just a revenge arc anymore. It was justice. Maria filed a motion to allow Anya to testify. Since her experience directly pertained to Bryce's pattern of property mismanagement, and since he was vying for ownership of a property with a minor in it, Judge Reyes approved it. Bryce didn't see it coming. He thought this would be a 3-day affair of dry paperwork. He thought he'd lean on my parents' testimony and ride the wave of bloodline loyalty. But he'd underestimated the quiet fire of someone who'd been cornered for too long. The more you push a man like me, the more dangerous he becomes. Then something unexpected happened. Arthur called. Not Eleanor. Not Sarah. My dad. I hadn't spoken to him directly in over 2 months. Liam, he said stiffly. We need to talk. I stayed silent. Let him sit in it. Your mother told me about your concerns about the reverse mortgage. About Bryce. I waited. You should have come to me earlier, he said. I let out a small laugh. Like the last time I called, and you let it go to voicemail? He sighed. I didn't know all the details, but we've had second thoughts about the power of attorney. Yes, he said. And about the house? I didn't jump. I didn't get hopeful. I just listened. I think we need to go over some things, he said face to face. We met the next evening at a small diner near their retirement community. He looked tired, older than I remembered, like whatever illusion of Bryce being their savior had finally cracked. He came in with a manila envelope and slid it across the table. I opened it. Inside were copies of the reverse mortgage, a list of loans Bryce had encouraged them to take, and at the bottom, a new notarized statement revoking the pending power of attorney transfer. I don't know what game Bryce is playing, Arthur said. But I'm starting to realize he doesn't care who he burns. You were right. I stayed quiet for a long time. Then I said, I'm still going to court. He nodded. I know. And I'm still fighting for the house. He hesitated, then said, maybe it's time it belonged to someone who actually treated it like home. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly, but it was close. The final piece of the setup came 3 days later. Marcus called again. I've got it, he said. Got what? Something your brother never wanted you to find. Apparently, Bryce had once used my parents' address, my house's address, as proof of residency for a business application back in 2018. Not just any business. One tied to a government pandemic relief grant. He claimed the property was a low-income rental unit, filed for funds, got approved. But here's the kicker, the grant terms required the applicant to own the property outright. And at that time, my parents still held the deed. Which meant Bryce had committed federal fraud. Marcus got the application. It had Bryce's signature, the fake rental agreement, and even a fake tenant name. It was all falsified. We didn't go to the authorities. Not yet. Instead, Maria included it in a sealed envelope to the judge, labeled Exhibit D, Supplemental Evidence, Rebuttal to Claim of Responsible Ownership. The trap was set. The plan wasn't loud or flashy. It wasn't even about vengeance anymore. It was about proving publicly and irrevocably that Bryce wasn't fit to own a backyard swing set, let alone a house with a child in it. And it was about proving finally that I wasn't the problem. That I was the only one holding everything together while everyone else played games. The hearing was scheduled for Monday, 3 days. And for once, I was ready. Not just ready to defend, ready to win. Courtroom 2B was packed on Monday morning. Not with a huge audience, just the usual people. A couple legal clerks, a few curious attorneys, my parents sitting stiffly in the second row, and Bryce, smug in a navy blue blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. This was the day it would all unfold. I showed up early, wearing the same suit I'd worn to my wedding. It still fit, barely. I figured that was symbolic, something old, something from when I believed in family, now repurposed to protect what little I had left of it. Sam wasn't there. I left him with Sarah. He'd already done his part, braver than most adults ever could be. He didn't need to see the final act. This was mine. Maria looked like she hadn't slept, but she was all sharp lines and calm focus. She patted my shoulder as I sat beside her. Ready as I'll ever be. Judge Elena Reyes entered and immediately cut through the noise like a scalpel. "Let's proceed," she said. "Today we will hear the final arguments and witness testimony regarding Bennett versus Bennett regarding the ownership and occupancy of the property located at 417 Green Valley Drive." Bryce's lawyer started with his tired speech. "Your Honor, this property has remained legally in the name of Arthur and Eleanor Bennett. Our client, Bryce Bennett, has been granted written authorization by the owners to act on their behalf. Mr. Liam Bennett, while residing at the property, has made no formal arrangements for ownership, rent, or title transfer. He is, by all legal definitions, a tenant at will." Maria didn't flinch. She'd heard it all. So had I. Then it was our turn. She stood. "Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate not only that Mr. Liam Bennett has a legitimate claim to equitable interest in the property due to years of consistent investment, occupancy, and care, but also that the plaintiff, Bryce Bennett, has acted in bad faith, used manipulative tactics to gain control, and is fundamentally unfit to take ownership of the property in question." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You'll have to back that with more than sentiment, counsel." Maria smiled. "We intend to." The first hour was foundational. Maria laid out the receipts, taxes paid, utilities, structural repairs, all from my accounts. Photos of birthday parties, Halloween decorations, even Sam's first steps taken in that same living room. She highlighted that my parents had never collected rent, never asked for it, and never treated the home as anything but my responsibility, even in their own emails. Then came the neighbors, 2 of them. One testified they hadn't seen my parents in years. The other spoke about watching me shovel that driveway every single storm for over a decade. "That's his house," she said. "Anyone can see that." But it was Anya's testimony that changed everything. When she walked in, early 30s, nervous but composed, Bryce visibly flinched. His jaw tightened. His lawyer whispered something. Anya took the stand. "Miss Jefferson," Maria began. "Can you explain how you know Mr. Bryce Bennett?" "I rented a property from him last year," she said. "He listed it through a company called Redwood Urban Holdings. I found it online." "And what was your experience?" Her voice wavered, but she held firm. "There was black mold in the bathroom, under the sink, spreading into the hallway. My daughter started having breathing problems. I sent pictures, left messages. He didn't respond for 3 weeks. When I finally got through, he told me to find somewhere else if I didn't like it." Gasps rippled through the gallery. "Did he ever resolve the issue?" "No," she said. "I had to break the lease. He kept my deposit." Maria let the silence sit. Then she said, "Your Honor, we have documentation, dated photos, medical reports, and a signed rental agreement showing that this incident took place under one of Mr. Bennett's business entities." Bryce's lawyer stood. "Irrelevant. This has no bearing on the Green Valley Drive property." But Maria was ready. "It shows a pattern, Your Honor. A pattern of neglect, deception, and lack of accountability. The plaintiff is vying for control of a property where a child currently resides. The same plaintiff who failed to maintain a safe environment for a child tenant elsewhere. This is directly relevant to the question of responsible ownership. Judge Reyes paused. Sustained. Continue. Bryce's face turned the color of wet clay. Then Maria played her final card. She approached the bench and handed over the sealed envelope. Your Honor, this is Exhibit D. A recently discovered application for a government grant submitted by Bryce Bennett, declaring the Green Valley Drive property as a rental unit despite having no legal claim to it and no record of any rental activity. We believe this constitutes misrepresentation and potentially fraud. The courtroom went still. The judge opened the envelope. Read, then looked up slowly. Mr. Bennett, would you care to respond to this claim? Bryce stood, visibly sweating. That document was. It was an early proposal. Nothing came of it. I never followed through. Maria struck. The funds were dispersed, Your Honor. We have records of the deposit, and we've confirmed that the grant terms required ownership of the property. This is not an early proposal. This is an executed document, signed, processed, and paid. Bryce's lawyer tried to interject, but the judge raised a hand. I'll decide what's admissible. She looked back at the paper. I assume, Miss Jefferson, this document has also been sent to the appropriate federal authorities. Maria didn't blink. Yes, Your Honor. As a matter of civic duty. And just like that, Bryce Bennett's entire facade cracked. He slumped in his seat, eyes darting between his parents, his attorney, and the floor. Eleanor closed her eyes. Arthur looked at his hands. Then the judge turned to me. Mr. Bennett, would you like to say anything before we conclude today's hearing? I stood slowly. I hadn't planned to speak, but something inside me knew I needed to. I didn't give a speech. I didn't lash out. I just said this, I didn't ask for this fight. I never wanted to take my family to court. I spent 12 years in that house raising my son, fixing what broke, and building a life after mine fell apart. I thought that mattered. I still do. All I want is to keep a roof over my child's head. A roof I've earned brick by brick. And I hope someday we can all find peace, but not at the cost of being trampled. The judge nodded. She turned her chair slightly, writing something down. Then she said the words I'll never forget. This court will reconvene in 48 hours for the formal ruling. But in light of the new evidence presented today, I am issuing a temporary injunction prohibiting any change of ownership, construction, or legal filings related to the property at 417 Green Valley Drive. Bryce's lawyer stood. Your Honor, I must protest. Sit down, counselor, she said without looking up. And just like that, Bryce's plan collapsed. He left the courtroom that day without speaking to anyone. Not our parents, not his lawyer, not even the press that had started to sniff around outside. Anya shook my hand on the way out and said he deserved that. I just nodded, but I wasn't smiling yet, because the final verdict was still to come and I had one last card left to play. The final day of court felt like the eye of a storm. Calm, but only because every piece had already been thrown into the wind. I sat there in my old suit, hands folded, watching Bryce squirm in his tailored one. His usual confidence was gone, the smirk replaced by silence. His lawyer barely looked at him. And for the first time, my parents weren't sitting behind him. They were behind me. Arthur, stone-faced. Eleanor, pale and quiet, twisting a tissue. Sarah sat with them, arms crossed, her chin high. Judge Reyes entered briskly and wasted no time. This court has reviewed all evidence, testimony, and documentation related to the dispute over 417 Green Valley Drive. We will now proceed with a final ruling. I didn't breathe. In matters of property, the law prioritizes ownership, contractual obligations, and intent. While it is true that the deed to the Green Valley Drive property remains in the name of Arthur and Eleanor Bennett, the court recognizes that over the past 12 years, the defendant, Liam Bennett, has demonstrated continuous exclusive use and maintenance of the residence. The plaintiffs provided no lease, no documentation requesting rent, and no communication suggesting that the defendant's occupancy was intended to be temporary. Bryce stiffened. I saw his jaw clench. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court finds the actions of Bryce Bennett to be not only misleading, but potentially criminal. Submitting fraudulent information on a government loan application, misrepresenting property ownership, and interfering with lawful occupancy constitutes serious violations. This evidence, though outside the immediate scope of this property dispute, casts doubt on Mr. Bryce Bennett's credibility and character. She paused, looked over her glasses. Accordingly, the court grants the defendant, Liam Bennett, equitable interest in the property and rules in favor of initiating a transfer of title under the doctrine of constructive trust. This effectively grants Mr. Bennett legal ownership of 417 Green Valley Drive. My heart dropped, then soared. It was done. I had won. I closed my eyes and took the deepest breath I'd taken in months. Maria put a hand on my arm and whispered, "You did it." But the judge wasn't finished. In addition, she said, the court strongly recommends that Arthur and Eleanor Bennett seek independent legal counsel regarding their financial entanglements with Bryce Bennett. Based on the exhibits provided, including Exhibit D, the court has submitted a recommendation to federal authorities to open an investigation into the use of pandemic relief funds by Bryce Bennett and his business entities. Gasps from the gallery, from my parents, even from the court clerk. Bryce stood suddenly. That's not even," the judge cut him off. "Mr. Bennett, I suggest you remain silent. Anything you say can now be subject to criminal investigation." His lawyer grabbed his sleeve and pulled him back into his seat. The gavel came down. It was over. Afterward, people shuffled out quietly. Some whispered, some stared. I stayed seated, letting the noise fade. Maria leaned down and said, "There will be paperwork. We'll file the title transfer immediately. But today it's yours." She was right. The house was mine, legally, permanently. And the truth? It didn't feel like victory. Not exactly. It felt like relief. Bryce stormed out without a word. Didn't even look back. Not at me. Not at our parents. Not at anyone. His future, whatever it looked like now, was no longer my concern. But my parents lingered. I turned slowly as they approached. Eleanor's eyes were red. Arthur's shoulders sagged. They looked smaller somehow, like the roles had reversed. "We didn't see it," Eleanor whispered. "We didn't want to believe he'd do that." I nodded. "You believed in him." "I get it." Arthur cleared his throat. "You saved the house. You saved us, too, even if we didn't deserve it." There was nothing to say to that. Not yet. Maybe one day. Sarah stepped forward, fierce and loyal as ever, and gave me a hug so tight I thought my ribs would crack. "Proud of you, kid," she said. "Proud of you for not stooping to his level." Sam wasn't in the courtroom. But when I picked him up that afternoon, he ran out of Sarah's house holding something behind his back. "Close your eyes," he shouted. I laughed and obeyed. When I opened them, he was holding a crayon drawing of our house. Crooked and messy, but perfect in every way. On the lawn were two stick figures, him and me. He'd drawn a banner over the front door. It said, "We live here forever." I knelt down and hugged him tight. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt complete. What would you have done if your family turned on you like that?